Thank you. So thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed my first ever time in Sofia, and I really enjoyed this conference so far. Today I'm going to talk about what I learned from building a Twitter art bot. So this is what I built. It's called Reichsbot, and it's a bot that works together with the database of a museum in Amsterdam called the Rijksmuseum. And usually people have demo time a little bit later in their talk, but I'm gonna welcome you right now to try it out. So what you do is you tweet one word at it, and you can also try more words, but maybe start with one. And then it uses that word as a search term in the Rijksmuseum collection, and it responds with an image. So what even is a bot? This was like, I should just say that all the images I use for this presentation are from the Rijksmuseum, so I also had a lot of fun kind of looking for illustrations to certain things, and I was like trying to think of like a good way to, with these like beautiful old images, to illustrate bots, and this is one of the best things I came up with, sort of a image of imitating humans in double, in triple. So what is a bot? I was actually surprised when I looked for a definition of it that there aren't really any good ones out there, or it's all a little bit vague. But here's one: a computer program that works automatically, especially one that searches for and finds information on the internet. I also really like the associations that this dictionary gave, one of them being killer app. So I started working on this project a little while ago, and when I started, there was, I think, a little bit more of a sense of innocence around like Twitter bots. It was sort of a thing that was fun and playful, and since then it kind of went south. And so this is a headline from just a few days ago. So bots, and especially Twitter bots, have been a lot in the news cycle for just being evil and swaying elections and doing terrible stuff. And I think we've all been pestered by them on Twitter. And this is another like pretty well-known example. This is this project that was about building this AI-based Twitter bot that would sort of absorb human language and adapt the behavior of people who tweeted at it. And then the idea was that it would, it would be like an experiment to figure out how humans interact. And it was hijacked by an army of trolls, and within like a very short time started spewing out like really racist and terrible sexist stuff. So this was like one of the nicest tweets I could find that Tay tweeted. So this is like a good example because of a Twitter bot gone wrong, because it's I guess it's with many AI things, it can reproduce human behavior, and that can be a little dangerous. But actually, I was inspired by something else when I started building this bot. I have a background in art history, and I worked in museums for many years, and that was like my first career before I became a developer. And one thing that I'm really inspired by is it goes a little bit to the same thing as open source. It's this idea of basically sharing data freely within cultural institutions. And so this is this quote. This is from the SF MoMA, where the head of the digital collection is saying, in making the data public and usable, the museum's API, like the museum itself, becomes a platform for open, hands-on exploration. So people are thinking about like sharing knowledge. And it's especially something that's promoted by something called Open Glam, which I don't know if any of you heard about, but it's a movement that it stands for open galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. And the idea is that there's all this content, and we already kind of paid for it through our taxes, because these cultural institutions within Europe, at least, typically are funded through the state. So there's all this amazing stuff. And we should be able, of course, we want to go to these places and see it, but we should also be able to access it and enjoy it digitally. So I was really inspired by this, and I wanted to create a project that dealt with some of this data. And so this was what I came up with. I pretty early on knew I wanted to work with the Rijksmuseum API. I looked around at a couple of museum APIs, and honestly, I picked theirs because theirs was really well documented. So yay for documentation. So how did I build it? Well, I mean, it's pretty, for anyone, if anyone wants to build a Twitter bot, I would say, like, you should go ahead and do it. It's pretty easy, and it's really nice to do it in Ruby. You just have to create a client to communicate with the API. And then there is a really nice Twitter gem that's actually built by a former mentor of mine, Eric. Then you have to set up keys in a client to interact with your, in this case I'm interacting with two APIs. I'm interacting with the Rijksmuseum Museum API, and I'm interacting with the Twitter API. And then you have to set up some really, in my case, like very basic methods. One called get image and one called reply with image. So that's really like very, very basic. I wanted like pretty early on to also add this one, already replied, to make sure that it didn't just kind of like go crazy and keep on responding to itself. More on that later. So one thing that was like I really like about this project is because we're used to kind of as developers documenting our trial and errors through GitHub, for example. But in this case, if you look at the Twitter account, it actually has like a pretty nice log of like it being built. And so this is like the first tweet. This was like just manually like hello, and then the second tweet was sort of like cheating of just like manually tweeting a picture, and then third tweet is like yay! It interacts with the API, but like looks really ugly. And I left all these tweets there because I think it's like part of the story of making it that I really wanted to leave. I probably should have started with the TDD way of writing tests, but I didn't. I just kind of like kept going and then tried and tried. And so this is actually how I tested it. I would just like tweet at it, like, does it work now? Does it work now? Does it work now? And you can see this is me just kind of getting more tired and snacky as I try to get this thing running. So I had like an issue early on. Like as soon as it worked, I got it up and running. It would respond. That was great. But then I hadn't. I'd set like a default value. If it couldn't find an image for this word you used, it would just give you these tulips. And as you can see, here's this problem that there's quite a lot of these tulips because it's that's sort of an issue in itself. But it can only work with these search terms that museum employees gave to these images. So that's a whole kind of other can of worms. But quite like it happens that it can't find the words you're using, even very well-known words. So I wanted to fix that. So I wanted to, because it's too boring, the same old tulips. So I wanted to fix that. So I made another method called random image, to at least make sure to kind of spice it up a little bit, like when you don't get whatever it was that you were asking for. So I think like I'm kind of happy with this talk to also talk about all the things that went wrong, because this was sort of like a side project, just like a for fun thing I did on the side, and I really learned so much. Like I worked on bigger projects within bigger teams, and generally when you do that and things are already set up, and there's a lot of like stuff that can't go wrong, and in this case a lot of stuff did go wrong, and that the things that were like the biggest errors were of course like the things to learn the most from. So one of the things I did was I accidentally put all my secret keys on GitHub, and that made me feel a little bit like this woman here on the left. But that was like, that's good. Then you really kind of never do that again. And it was also fun because like I got to figure out how to even fix that. And turns out there's like a way that's like native to GitHub to delete something from the record. That's like a 28-step kind of operation. But there's also something called the repo cleaner, and in the end that was what I went for, because it's like a 2-step thing. It's just like bam, bam, and done. But the funny thing about using this was that, I don't know if you can see it at the end, but it's like it kind of ran and it did the thing, and then it said like, as a little comment afterwards, it says, "You can rewrite history in Git. Don't let Trump do it for real." So it's that was like a nice part of the service, that it came with a little bit of extra comments. So this was like the best image I could find for recursion, because that was sort of like another epic fail where I learned quite a lot, I felt. I managed to get the whole account totally locked down by Twitter, and the way I did that was really interesting, and a learning experience in itself. So basically, what I did was, as soon as it was up and running, I got so excited that I tweeted from the Reichsbot account something like, "Yay! You can now tweet at Reichsbot, and you'll get a reply with an image from the Rijksmuseum." And so I mentioned, like, me as the bot, I mentioned myself in a tweet to myself, and then it just kind of was spinning out of control. It just like replied to the reply to, and it was just like, within like, the amazing thing about that experience though was like, it gave me a lot of respect for Twitter, because it did not even, like, they did not even last 5 minutes before they shut it down. This script I have, like, running this loop, it's this infinite loop. It's set with a sleep timer for 30 seconds. So it runs and it sleeps for 30 seconds. So, I mean, it could have been way worse, but maybe it was like within a couple of minutes, maybe it was something like 25 tweets. It was tweeting at itself or something. But anyways, that was enough to like block it. So that was impressive. Yeah, but I mean, luckily that got resolved, and that was another fun thing to learn. This project was built at Rails Girls Copenhagen, and so I just wanted to mention that here and say that that's sort of part of why it was done, and it's like my first venture into doing projects with basically combining my interests of art and cultural institutions and programming, and certainly not my last. Thank you.